Hello, students. Today we're going to go into greater depth in how the Federal Reserve works. Your book skips this part, but I think it's worth knowing. So, first of all, the Federal Reserve is split into 12 regional banks. And I found this map online of the 12 regions. So, it might look kind of strange to modern eyes if I tasked you guys to draw a map with 12 roughly equal regions. You would definitely not come up with something like this. So the reason behind this map is that the Fed, as we know it today, was established back in 1913. Back in 1913, the West Coast did not have a whole lot of people. California was not a very populous state back then. So back in 1913, this actually made sense to have one bank to serve the rural West Coast, and you have several banks on the more densely populated East Coast. And as you can see, we have one right here in Richmond, the Richmond Fed. So some of the Fed presidents here of these 12 regional banks, they get to have a say on the Federal Reserve's policy. So the committee that sets policy is the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC for short. Recall back in chapter 17, we talked about open market operations, one of the Fed's major tools to conduct monetary policy. So open market operations means they buy or sell short-term treasuries, and that influences interest rates and the money supply. So this committee decides what they're going to do. So the New York Fed president's always going to be among the voting members. That's because there are a lot of financial firms in New York City. So that's why they get a permanent position. Now, the other 11 regions here that are not New York, 4 of them get to vote, and it rotates through. So the other 7 come from the Board of Governors. So you can see if you look at the map closely here, in Washington, D.C., that's where the Board of Governors are located. So the Board of Governors, they are appointed by the president, the U.S. president that is, not the president of these regional banks. And they have to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And one of those 7 is going to be the Fed chair. Now, their terms are very long, so it's not like a 2-year congressman or a 6-year senator. These terms actually last 14 years. Now, the chair, though, they only serve in their position as chair for 4 years. So our current chair is Jerome Powell. So chairs can be reappointed. So Jerome Powell has been chair for more than 4 years. So he got 1 4-year term, and then he got reappointed again. So originally appointed by former President Trump and then reappointed by President Biden. So maybe you're wondering, why does they have this particular structure? Why they decide that's the way to run the Fed? Well, there is a rationale behind it. Sorry, I got over being sick and my voice is still not 100%. So the reason why you don't have all 12 appointed by Congress and the president. Recall back in Chapter 8, we learned that while inflation is harmful, sometimes governments intentionally allow it. So one reason we saw that governments might allow inflation is to reduce their debt. Now, the same people who control the debt, which is Congress and the president, they decide spending and taxes. If they also control the money supply, they're going to be tempted to print a lot of money, create inflation so they can spend more and tax less. So the Fed is intentionally designed to be somewhat independent of political influence. It's designed to be insulated from politics. So you have an independent Fed, and if Congress and the president are running large deficits, the independent Fed will just say, that's not my problem. We're going to not accommodate you by allowing all this inflation. That's the idea. Well, if you want independent Fed, why do you have a board of governors at all? We have 12 voting members, we have 12 regional banks, so why don't you just have all 12 of those regional presidents be on the FOMC and only have them vote? Well, we're supposed to be a democracy, and the regional banks they're not democratic. You don't get to vote on the Richmond Fed president, even though you live in Richmond. So if you had the Fed be entirely independent, that could also potentially be undemocratic. So you have kind of a mix of both. You want to have some appointees who are responsive to the president and the Senate, so some democratic accountability, but also some other appointees who have some insulation from the politics. Another way you can try to get some insulation from politics is these long terms. Like I said, the term length was 14 years. So even a two-term president who serves 8 years, two-term U.S. president that is, they're not going to be able to appoint the whole board of governors. So no single president or no single Senate is going to be able to just rewrite Fed policy by stacking the board of governors. So that's the way we try to balance democratic accountability with independence from this temptation to create inflation. And that wraps up Chapter 17.